I never would have thought it would be this way, to proclaim my nationality. I got a birthright inheritance, Europeans don't want you to have an actuality. I'm an everlasting spirit personality, man, soon to control elements whenever I balance my span. Nationality is precious for your national redemption. We come out of the dead sense, gathered up at the
Thank you for tuning in to WDRB Media, the voice of the community, only station giving you double the information and inspiration. You are listening to What is Your Nationality? And I'm your host, Shem L. I'm the author of several books, including Land of the Free, which you can purchase on my website, sheml.com. That's SHEM-EL.com. And also want to let you know that we are coming close to that time in reference to the upcoming first social economic conference in Durham, North Carolina, early 2022. We have all of our speakers lined up. Also, just to let you know that we are coming very close to securing a particular venue and date and time. So stay tuned for those updates. Again, that is the first social and economic conference in Durham, North Carolina, early part of 2022. So in this particular episode, we are going to address the recent verdict of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. Very, very controversial. A lot has been spoken about it. And I entitled this particular episode, Black Gun, White Justice. Black Gun, White Justice. And those of you who know me, or I should say who have been listening to me, know that I speak on nationality, and this episode is no different. However, we're gonna get into this race thing because it's very interesting, and it speaks to the point of nationality and why we need to really get out of this racial construct, because race is the basis of racism. And racism, in its essence, is white supremacy. We're going to go into that. We truly are going to go into this whole thing, and I'm going to go into it as far as in the law, based on the Federal Directive 15. We're going to dive into some stuff pertaining to this, because everyone's saying the obvious, that if this was a person who was classified as black, if it was a teenager who was identified as black or African American, this type of verdict would not have taken place. And yet here we are. And, you know, wildly enough, the victims of this particular crime, the murder, basically, done by Kyle Rittenhouse, were not people who are identified as black or African American. They were identified as white males, by a young male who also was identified as white, 17 at the time. So it gets real deep. We're going to get into Wisconsin, the state of Wisconsin, because when you look at that state, I'm just going to be honest with you, and I didn't know this at first, but that the political system within Wisconsin in and of itself is real deep, and you would have to watch a particular show that I'm going to get into pertaining to that. But we're going to explore that. We're going to explore about the situation with Memphis, the laws in Memphis, you know, the gun laws, Tennessee, and the recent death of the young rapper known as Young Dolph, who died at the age of 36 as a result of gun violence. And we're going to explore the gun laws there and some interesting stuff there. We got a lot to dive into, but first we're going to take a brief pause for the cause. And when we come back, we will continue our discussion. You are listening to What is Your Nationality? And I'm your host, Shem L. You are tuned in to WDRB Media, the voice of the community, the only station giving you double the information and inspiration. We will be right back after the break.
Haitai Kwanzaa at the Haitai Heritage Center in Durham, North Carolina. Haitai Kwanzaa kicks off the week-long Kwanzaa festivities in the Raleigh-Durham area. Kwanzaa is a 7-day celebration based on Nguzo Saba, which is the 7 principles. And at the Haitai Heritage Center, there will be a host of events and activities for children as well as adults beginning on December 26th. Be sure to be there at the Haitai Heritage Center, where you will have a host of community activists and community groups such as Uplifting Humanity. Check us out at the Haitai Heritage Center. Go to haitai.org for more details.
Welcome back to WDRB Media, the voice of the community, and those streaming live through free TuneIn radio app and through iHeartRadio. You are listening to What is Your Nationality? And I'm your host, Shem L. I am the author of several books, including What is the Higher Self, which you can purchase on my website, sheml.com. That's SHEM-EL.com. And also, just a friendly reminder that coming up in 2022, we will have the first social and economic conference in Durham, North Carolina. We have all the speakers lined up, and we are very close to securing a venue and date and time. So be on the lookout for those updates. Again, that's the first social and economic conference in Durham, North Carolina in the early part of 2022. So if you are just joining in, we were discussing about the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict. And very, very, very controversial. People are still talking about it. A lot of mixed emotions, a lot of hurt, a lot of anger, and kind of give some context, if at all possible, to this. So to do that, I would actually need to speak on the background of this story to give some context. So this took place on August 25th of last year, okay, in the state of Wisconsin. And this actually occurred after the police shooting of Jacob Blake, a 29-year-old man who was shot and seriously injured by the police officer Rustin Shesky in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Jacob Blake is identified as a black man, African American, and Rustin Shesky identifies himself as a white male. So you know where this is going. So Kyle Rittenhouse is classified as also a white male, classifies himself as a white male, 17-year-old at the time, from Illinois, Antioch, Illinois, which was a whole nother state. So he armed himself with a semi-automatic rifle. It had it was like an AR-15 type of rifle, and he traveled across state lines from Illinois to Wisconsin. Okay. This is the funny thing. He said he was in Kenosha at the time that this took place in August 25th of last year to protect a car dealership that was from being vandalized and to provide medical aid. Now, this is just out of that. When you hear that, he went all the way from Illinois. A 17-year-old travels from Illinois all the way to Kenosha to protect a car dealership that he don't do business with. He's 17 years old, and to provide medical aid. Okay, all right. So the story is that he's seen walking around with this gun, this semi-automatic, during there was protesting going on around that time. The claim is that he was allegedly pursued by a group that included a resident of Kenosha by the name of Joseph Rosenbaum, who was unarmed. Okay. Now, here's where it gets funny. Now, Joseph Rosenbaum is also identified as white, right? And so after a man by the name of Joshua Zeminski allegedly fired a shot in the air, right? Rittenhouse turned towards Rosenbaum. Again, he's unarmed, who, according to a witness, had lunged at Rittenhouse and tried to take his rifle. And then at that point in time, Rittenhouse, Kyle, had fired 4 times at Joseph Rosenbaum, killing him. Okay. Now, the man, Joshua Zeminski, wasn't even from Kenosha. He was from another city called Racine County, a whole nother county. He's from a whole nother county. But anyway, so he's being followed by the crowd after shooting him. Of course, there's mayhem. He tripped, fell into the ground. He hit his head. He fired twice at a man who jump kicked him, and he missed him. Now, this particular individual was classified as a black man, okay? Now, and then there was another resident, Silver Lake resident in Kenosha County, Anthony Huber, right, who hit him in the shoulder with a skateboard and attempted to take his rifle. Okay. Rittenhouse shot at him once, killing him, shot in the chest. Okay. Now, then there was another person. Let me see, Gage Grauskos. Kurtz. I apologize for mispronouncing the last name, but he also from another county, Milwaukee County in Wisconsin, approached Rittenhouse while carrying a handgun, and which in court he admitted to pointing at Rittenhouse. Rittenhouse shot him in the arm. So, if I'm not mistaken, he may have killed 3 people. He injured a number of them, but he definitely killed 3 people. And it was like, so it's like 3 different confrontations. So there's, he may just, he may have killed 2. He definitely killed 2. But my point of it all is that this whole story became big news, and the trial came out this year. And lo and behold, he's found not guilty. Now, this is very interesting. Well, it's not really interesting. It's not surprising, to be honest. I'm just going to be totally transparent. It's not surprising. Many of us are not surprised by this. So much so that even Juan Williams of Fox News made an interesting statement. And Juan Williams, for those who know, he is a man who identifies himself as, or is identified as a Black or African-American male who is a conservative and is on Fox News. He's a Fox News analyst. And in the past, he's been very controversial in pertaining to his stance on certain things that a lot of people in what's considered the African-American community take issue with. But interestingly enough, he made an interesting statement. So I'm actually going to read this. This is an article that came out, and it says the following. Fox News' Juan Williams. If Kyle Rittenhouse was a Black teen, quote, the laws might have treated him a little differently, end quote. So it says Fox News analyst Juan Williams said on Friday night, Kyle Rittenhouse would have been treated much differently by the justice system if he was a Black teen. Rittenhouse was found not guilty of all charges, including first-degree reckless homicide and first-degree recklessly endangering safety. On Fox News' special report, Shannon Bream asked Williams for his reaction to inflammatory commentary surrounding the trial. Williams said the jury, quote, made a considered decision after a lengthy 3 days, looking at the facts of the case and looking at the law, end quote. Then he continues, quote, I think there are lots of people who are concerned that someone crossing into another state with a weapon, really a vicious weapon, is now under the law allowed to engage in what looks like vigilantism, right? End quote. Williams went on to say that a Black teenager who did exactly what Rittenhouse did would have received a very different response. He goes on to say this. And you think about concealed right to carry laws. You think about your stand your ground laws. The whole notion of self-defense when you are dealing with someone who's armed is now, we have gone away from the idea of you are responsible when possible to step back if you're armed. Now with these new laws, if you shoot, then you can say that you felt threatened. I think it's, one other thought is if this had been a Black teenager who had done this, wow, I think the laws might have treated him a little differently. So even Juan Williams, of Fox News, a conservative, made that statement. And you think about this and you ask yourself pretty much like, how is this possible? Because he made an interesting point. He made a point about the fact that this man traveled across state lines. He traveled all the way from Illinois to Wisconsin with a semi-automatic rifle in the public, and carrying it in the public. It wasn't on private property. So that naturally leads you to go into the aspect of, does he have the complexion for the protection? Obviously he does. And the interesting thing is that none of his victims, at least the ones who were killed, are classified as Black. So even to that point, although it is known that this actually took place around the issue pertaining to Jacob Blake and him being shot by the police. So that's very interesting when you get into this. We have to dive deeper into this, because I'm going to get into a little bit of law and contrast it later on to what's going on in Tennessee, right? But before I do that, I'm going to take a brief pause for the cause. However, after the break, we will continue our discussion. You are tuned into WDRB Media, the voice of the community, the only station giving you double the information and inspiration. Do not go anywhere, because we will be right back.
Haitai Kwanzaa at the Haitai Heritage Center in Durham, North Carolina. Haitai Kwanzaa kicks off the week-long Kwanzaa festivities in the Raleigh-Durham area. Kwanzaa is a 7-day celebration based on Nguzo Saba, which is the 7 principles. And at the Haitai Heritage Center, there will be a host of events and activities for children as well as adults beginning on December 26th. Be sure to be there at the Haitai Heritage Center, where you will have a host of community activists and community groups such as Uplifting Humanity. Check us out at the Haitai Heritage Center. Go to haitai.org for more details.
Welcome back to WDRB Media, the voice of the community, and those streaming live through free TuneIn radio app and through iHeartRadio. You are listening to What is Your Nationality? And I am your host, Shem L. I am the author of several books, including What is the Devil Sometimes Called, which you can purchase on my website, sheml.com. That's SHEM-EL.com. Also, as a friendly reminder, we are still on for the first social and economic conference in Durham, North Carolina in the early part of 2022. We have all of our speakers lined up. Also, we are very close to securing a venue and date and time. So be tuned in for those updates. Again, that's the first social and economic conference in Durham, North Carolina, for the early part of 2022. So if you're just tuning in, we are discussing about the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. And if I didn't tell you what I titled this particular episode, I titled it Black Guns, White Justice. Black Guns, White Justice. So previously I discussed about the background of the situation with the shooting in Wisconsin and what happened with Kyle Rittenhouse, how he shot up several other people. He killed a couple of people. They were identified as white males. He's identified as a white male. And long story short, they had a trial, and he was found not guilty on all charges. So there's a spew of controversy surrounding that. So I want to give some context to this. First, I want to go into the law. And it's very important that we look into the law because a lot of people are just going to deal with this strictly from emotional standpoint, which is understandable because people lost lives. However, when we get into the law and remove the emotionalism from it, it gives a clearer insight onto what we're dealing with. And really, it is a lesson for those of us who are searching to know more about our nationality, because our nationality was taken away from us, why it's even more important now more than ever to proclaim your nationality. So I want to go into actually the definition according to Law and Black's Law Dictionary on race. So if you were to look up in the Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition, on race, you will find it says race, an ethnical stock, a great division of mankind having in common certain distinguishing physical peculiarities constituting a comprehensive class, appearing to be derived from a distinct primitive source, a tribal or national stock, a division or subdivision of one of the great racial stocks of mankind distinguished by minor peculiarities. Now, the reason I wanted to go into that is, of course, it goes into stock, but another thing it addressed, it says constituting a comprehensive class. Okay? A comprehensive class. So what does it mean when you say class? What does that actually mean? So we would have to actually go into the legal definition of the word class. So when you look up class, because I always say you're dealing with the racial classification system. That's what it is. It's a classification system. And it has nothing to do with your genealogy, genetics, your biology, anything. It really doesn't. But it goes here, class. According to Black's Law Dictionary, class, the order or rank according to which persons or things are arranged or assorted. I'll repeat that. The class is the order or rank according to which persons or things are arranged or assorted. So just by that definition, that clearly explains why the white race classification, why that is the way it is. You follow? And to give more insight, I'm going to read the article from the Moorish Guide. You can find it in the book Moorish Literature. And I've always talked about this. This is an article that was in a book called, not a newspaper originally, called the Moorish Guide, that was published in Chicago by a man named Noble Drew Ali in the early 1920s. And this article is called What Shall We Call Him? It says, so often our various journalists find trouble in selecting the proper name for the Moorish American. Some say Negro, another will brand him race man, still another will call him Afro-American, and then come colored, dark American, coon, shine, the brethren, and your folks. it is indeed a hard matter to find something suitable for the various occasions where a title needs to be used. Is it that these people have no proper name? Did they have a national name when first brought to these shores in the early part of the 17th century? If so, what was it? Did not the land from which they were forced have a name? It now appears a good idea for those whose duty it is to write for the various journals to find out what the national name of the forefathers of these people was. Also look into the history of the founders of civilization and see who they were and where they stood in the building of the present civilization. Probably 2 hours in an up-to-date library was served to relieve the strain on our men of letters when the occasion presents itself for a title for these people. And here's the kicker. The matter of the various names given to these 22 million people with all colors of every race of the globe was an act of European psychology. They gave him a name, then defined it as something inferior to theirs. White, they defined as a color of purity. Black, they say, represents everything of evil. The Negro, as they were called in this nation, have no nation to which they might look with pride. Their history starts with the close of the Civil War, or more properly, with his being forced to serve someone else. Thus, he is separated from the illustrious history of his forefathers, who were the founders of the first civilization of the Old World. This matter should be looked into with a hope of correcting it. So, just in that article alone, it basically confirms what I read in the legal definition of the word race and class. When you create a name called white and define it as inferior to the word black or Negro or colored or African American, which is not a nationality, because Africa is not a nation, it's a continent. Okay? So putting that in the context, and I would definitely encourage everyone to go get a book called The Invention of the White Race. The Invention of the White Race by Theodore Allen. And it will tell you, and this is a man of European descent, classified as white, who wrote this book. And he himself said that prior to the 1500s, there were no group of people classified as white people. He'll tell you that. So, and he shows the evidence to prove it. So when we get into this white and black thing, know that it's all an illusion. It's a social construct. And I've, of course, have read before about the statement by the American Anthropological Association on race, where they say this back in May of 1997, if I'm not mistaken. And they tell you exactly what race is. So look at it from that point. So now we know the situation. Now keep this all in mind. We know the situation in Wisconsin. Okay. This is the interesting thing about Wisconsin. Wisconsin is a particular in terms of the law. Is very peculiar in terms of the law, right? You have to really get into that. You have to kind of understand it. You're going back to when they first established their settlement. We're talking back in 1848. Their flag literally has their state flag has the year 1848, which is not long, okay? And basically, you were dealing with the Algonquin people who originally lived there, right? Really, the word Wisconsin comes from the Wisconsin River, which came from the Algonquin people, the Algonquin Native Americans, who were dark skinned. Matter of fact, if you go to Durham, they have a whole lot of history on the Algonquin people, and they show the features. They all look like modern day people who you would call Black or African American. So the Europeans came in, right? And really starting back with the French. The French originally came in, and then the British. And then you had the French and Indian War that took place. And long story short, eventually you had, it became a state. But you're looking at a lot of Germans, Irish, Norwegians, people who went in there, okay? And although it was a free state in terms of there was no slavery, that doesn't mean there was not prejudice there, okay? So keep that in mind. Also, in terms of their law, there is a particular show on YouTube. It was a miniseries called The Making of a Murderer. I would suggest everybody watch that to get the point what I'm trying to get to. And just a side note, you're dealing with over 85% of the people there who live in Wisconsin are classified as white, right? While only a mere 6% are classified as Black or African American, right? But my point of it is this. I want to keep this in mind. In that documentary, Making of a Murderer, and I won't get too deep into the actual background of it, but I want to just say there was a small county involved in Wisconsin. I forget the name of the county, but you can look at the show and you'll find the name of the county. But this particular small county, they were so corrupt from the sheriff all the way down, definitely the whole sheriff department, sheriff, the attorney general, judges, they were all corrupt. Definitely the county was corrupt. You might even go as far as say that state was corrupt because they had to push it up to one particular case, and I won't give the details, but they had to go to federal court for them to look at the case and say, this doesn't even make sense. But unfortunately, Wisconsin, they were so determined, the state of Wisconsin was so determined because that case, it got a particular murder case that got appealed. They really went above and beyond to make sure that they would keep that person in jail. So, and of course, these were all European, people of European descent. What I mean by that, they were all classified as white. Now, why am I even saying that? I'm saying that to say that the state of Wisconsin is one of those highly politicized places when it comes to what they do. They like to keep their stuff in-house, and they don't like, they like to do it their way. It's not about what's necessarily what I've gotten just from watching those cases and what happened with the Kyle Rittenhouse is that they're not about necessarily dealing with it from a constitutional standpoint, at least the United States Constitution. So I want to use that and then take you to another state, Tennessee. Now, Tennessee is very interesting. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning Tennessee is because recently there was the murder of a rapper who was born Adolph Robert Thornton Jr. He's known to the world as Young Dolph, and he recently was murdered in his hometown in Memphis, Tennessee, where he's from, and that was his claim to fame. He even gave himself the title King of Memphis. That's how he came out with his first album. It's called King of Memphis. Independent rap artist, and he was killed in broad daylight, and there's a lot of, sorrow throughout the music industry, and, a lot of condolences to the family, of course. But one of the interesting things that I found out, and I came across this because there was another rapper speaking about this, and I did my research on it. That rapper name is Project Pat. He mentioned the fact that in Memphis, it's legal, based on a Tennessee law, it's legal to walk around with a gun without a permit. You do not need a permit. Whether it's concealed or open carry, you do not need a permit in Memphis. Really in Tennessee, but I'm speaking about Memphis because Memphis, this is a place that's majority of what people classified as African American, Negro, Black, Colored, and African American. The majority of the people there are classified as that, right? And there's this law in Tennessee that's a state law all across the board. And as long as you're 21 years of age or older, you can have it. And I actually looked at the website on memphispolice.org. You can pull it up. As of July 1st of this year, 2021, Tennessee law will permit a large majority of citizens to carry a loaded handgun on their person openly or concealed without having to possess a permit. Okay. Now, to be clear, it doesn't affect carrying rifles or shotguns, only handguns. So this is specifically for handguns, right? Your 9mm, etc. So you have to be 21 years or older. You can be 18 years or older if you are active military or honorably discharged from the military. The subject is in lawful possession of the handgun, meaning it's not stolen, and the subject is in a place where they are lawfully present, whatever that means. So I'm looking at this right now, and if I'm not mistaken, young Dolph was killed with a handgun, right? So why do I even say this? I say this because you and I know that this is going to open the door for even more cases of young men who are classified as Negro, Black, Colored, and African American being locked up. And I use the term, and I know nobody uses the term colored anymore, Negro, but I'm saying it like that because I'm letting you know it's really all the same thing. That's why I say Negro, Black, Colored, and African American, because it's really all the same thing. All of those titles delude to slavery. And to the point that Juan Williams made from Fox News, they are going to treat these young men in Memphis way differently than they're going to treat a Kyle Rittenhouse. So again, we got to stop playing this race game, because as long as we feed into that race game, we will lose. No one wins in the race of racism, particularly those classified as Negro, Black, Colored, and African American. We don't win in this. We don't win in the race classification, right? Because that's the basis of the racism and the white supremacy. So with that, we'll conclude. We will conclude. However, we'll take a brief pause for the cause, but we will get back and continue the discussion after the brief pause. And you are tuned into WDRB Media, the voice of the community, the only station giving you double the information and inspiration. Don't go anywhere, because we will be right back.
Haitai Kwanzaa at the Haitai Heritage Center in Durham, North Carolina. Haitai Kwanzaa kicks off the week-long Kwanzaa festivities in the Raleigh-Durham area. Kwanzaa is a 7-day celebration based on Nguzo Saba, which is the 7 principles. And at the Haitai Heritage Center, there will be a host of events and activities for children as well as adults beginning on December 26th. Be sure to be there at the Haitai Heritage Center, where you will have a host of community activists and community groups such as Uplifting Humanity. Check us out at the Haitai Heritage Center. Go to haitai.org for more details.
Welcome back to WDRB Media, the voice of the community, and those streaming live through free TuneIn Radio app and through iHeartRadio. You are listening to What is Your Nationality? And I am your host, Shem L. I am the author of several books, including How Many Days Are in the Circle, which you can purchase on my website, which is sheml.com. That's SHEM-EL.com. Also, as a friendly reminder, we are still on track for the first Social and Economic Conference in Durham, North Carolina in the early part of 2022. We have all of our speakers locked in, and we are close to securing a venue and time and date. So stay tuned for those updates. Again, that's the first Social and Economic Conference in Durham, North Carolina in the early part of 2022. So with that, if you're just tuning in, we were discussing the situation with the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. And the name of this episode is Black Guns, White Justice. And I was just speaking about not only the state of Wisconsin where the trial took place, but also I spoke about the state of Tennessee, specifically Memphis, Tennessee, where young Dolph was recently murdered. And they have some interesting gun laws now. They just passed this year that you can carry, either concealed or open, a handgun without a permit. And being that there's a lot of murders that have already historically been happening in Memphis, you know, it leads one to wonder, what is the ultimate aim? Now, it must be stated that there are multiple states that actually do this. I looked into Wisconsin and Illinois, because Illinois is actually the state where Kyle Rittenhouse actually lived. He lived close to the border. He lived, 15 miles away in Antioch, Wisconsin. So he lived in Antioch, Illinois. He traveled to Kenosha, Wisconsin, with his firearm. He had it out in the open. And, you know, for all intents and purposes, he technically didn't break any gun laws overall. However, there was one particular thing that struck me when I was researching this. If you actually look up, you go to the website for Wisconsin State Legislature, where it speaks about particularly the safe use and transportation of firearms and bows. That's the term that they're using, firearms and bows. And of course, this would include what Rittenhouse had. They speak about the restriction or the prohibition of being prohibited to shoot within 50 feet of the center of a roadway. Now, why 50 feet? I don't know. However, it made it clear that you cannot shoot within 50 feet of the center of a roadway. Now, if I remember correctly, when they were chasing this man, this young teenager, they were chasing him down the street. There's video to show this. Now, furthermore, it also states that there are exceptions to that particular rule. One would be a member of the armed forces, a member of the National Guard, and also the next one would be a private security person, right? To which Kyle Rittenhouse argued he was. However, according to Wisconsin State Legislature, that security person has to meet all of the requirements. And there are 5 requirements that they have to have. 1, they have to either have a private detective license or a private security permit. They have to hold a certificate of proficiency to carry a firearm by the Department of Safety and Professional Services. So that would be within the state of Wisconsin, not Illinois. He or she is performing his or her assigned duties and responsibilities. He or she is wearing a uniform that clearly identifies them as a private security person. And of course, the firearm is in plain view. Now, as the reports go, his argument was that he went to Kenosha because during the unrest, a lot of the protests and rioting in Kenosha following the police shooting of Jacob Blake, there were businesses that were going on social media pleading for help because they said that their businesses were being attacked and people who worked there were in danger and the patrons were in danger. So he decided to drive 15 miles over there to help. Now, he had a gun and he had a medical kit. He had a semi-automatic rifle and a medical kit. In none of the reports does it say he had a uniform saying that he was a private security person. None of them say that he had his private security permit on him. He had a certificate of proficiency. And none of them say that none of them produce the business that stood up and said, yeah, this man was securing my property. I found that interesting because when you look at the charges, none of those charges speak to that. He got 6 charges reckless homicide, recklessly endanger safety, intentional homicide, first degree, second degree, reckless homicide, attempted first degree intentional homicide, recklessly endangering the safety and the shooting of a person. Like, nothing pertaining to a violation of the gun law of a 17-year-old by a 17-year-old. So I thought that was very interesting. But again, complexion for the protection. And with that said, brothers and sisters, we have to proclaim our nationality. We have to go to our nationality, stand on our nationality. If you don't know about nationality, do your research, proclaim your nationality, because it's a mess out here. I promise you, it's a real mess out here. But I will end the show. Please join us next week as we tackle another topic for another time. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Continue to tune in every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can go to iHeartRadio. If you haven't already, download the app, follow WDRP Media, and you'll be sure to follow me every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, if you want to be a guest and talk about nationality, feel free to contact me on my website, shemel.com. That's SHEM-EL.com. Once again, you have been listening to What is Your Nationality? And I'm your host, Shem L, on WDRB Media, the voice of the community for double the information and inspiration. Until next time, continue to be blessed. And remember, nationality is the order of the day. And if you do nothing else, proclaim your nationality. Peace and love.
Surely still issues by his signature, he brought us. Accepted a straw man for value, therefore he redeemed mine. Talking about the corporate soul being conveyed, the lean dies. Prophet was billion babies, Michael archangel, devils noticed, that was noticed. They received a low grade blow, and then the beast had no understanding. The revelation spewed water at humanity. Amaras is the statement. I never would have thought it would be this way, to proclaim my nationality. I got a birthright inheritance. Europeans don't want you to have an actuality. I never would have thought it would be this way, to proclaim my nationality. I got a birthright inheritance. Europeans don't want you to have an actuality. Standing here, looking at my Moorish flag. Old glory, no story. Into the ground it goes back. Into the old northwest and southwest and make some territory. No such thing as U.S. citizen, historical enforcement. Though everything is voluntary though. You're suffering by the buck and resolutions you don't dare to know. I'm rapping while I'm here to verify. 13, 14, 15, the amendment was never ratified. To my black people, where your free national name was at? Cause attached with that, seemed like your own mental brain was snatched. Like Malcolm X told you many times, where was your heritage? Pick up a book and put down the alcoholic beverages, but don't stop it all at once. You get internally damaged, example your lungs and kidneys while growing up on campus. It's time to get back to the national affairs of man. I'm talking business, watch by action, with self-accredited. I'm a citizen of the United States of America, but not a U.S. citizen. My life's embarrassing enough, this my political status. In order to evolve, members should conduct themselves by the Constitution and bylaws. Act 6 is to proclaim no Jualis pointed to by an amendment. Shoot is where I've been appointed to. The language of the 805 is key to the 1099. So just get behind the profit and corporation design, cause it's time, it's long. I never would have thought it would be this way, to proclaim my nationality. I got a birthright inheritance. Europeans don't want you to have an actuality. I never would have thought it would be this way.